Hey guys, welcome back to Fast Keto. This episode is with one of our very frequent guests, Shawn Wells. He's known as Zone Halo or the Ingredientologist on Instagram, and he is a biochemist. He has his master's in nutritional biochemistry. He also is a registered dietitian and has been doing keto for about 20 years. So today we talk all about bodybuilding, keto, the traditional bro diet, reverse dieting, and we also get into a lot of other topics about self-love and your health journey and some really wonderful aspects of gratitude. And Shawn always takes the podcast to deeper levels. So I know you guys are going to enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed getting to record it. If you know someone that you think would enjoy it too, please share it with them. And as always, tag us over on Instagram in your stories or in your posts. Let us know what your takeaways were from the episode. And always love hearing from you guys so much. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode today with Shawn. All right, well, Shawn, welcome back to Fast Keto. I think this is maybe your fourth time on the show. You've probably been on the most of any guest, so welcome back, fourth time on Fast Keto.
Well, thank you for having me on, and thank you for making me a returning guest so many times. I think we should look at some kind of co-hosting opportunities.
Yeah, that would be fun. I always really enjoy our episodes, and they always end up being two-parters or longer. So I think it's great. And I do think people really enjoy some of the feedback I get the most positive. Some of the episodes I get the most positive feedback on are the ones where we're just having like a conversation, which you don't always get that with everybody that you have on. Sometimes it's more like Q&A or like it's more technical. But I know I love the podcast I listen to. It's just people having conversations.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to conversate today.
Yeah, we will converse. Okay. But of all the times you've been on, like we've done episodes talking about different aspects, answering people's questions. One of the things that I'd love to talk more about today is just more about your story. I saw, your presentation at KetoCon. You talked all about your health journey, and maybe you could talk a little bit about that because there are probably people listening who would love to know more about it and like how you ended up in this crazy keto space.
Yeah, I grew up in a very chaotic home, and I was also bullied at school and put on a lot of weight when I was young. I was an obese kid, and I got made fun of a lot, it seemed like even by the teachers, and it was okay back then to do that. And with things not being so great at home, it was difficult and it had an impact on me. And I didn't know like about depression growing up. I thought depression was for like people that cry in a corner and have to take medication, and depression kind of haunted me most of my life now that I look back. And now that we can more broadly accept it for what it is and how much damage it can do. And it's okay, obviously, to be acutely depressed. And I think we all go through emotions and we all grieve and feel things, but it's just when it's there all the time. And it's almost like this feeling like, some people think it's just sadness, but when it's with you chronically, it's almost like when it's really bad, it's almost like a lack of empathy. It's just, you're kind of just shut down and you don't feel things anymore. You don't feel highs or lows, like you're just empty inside. And it's kind of soul crushing and it's lonely. And there's been numerous points where I've felt like committing suicide. So kind of starts there. But I did very well in school. I was always a smart kid and I got by, and I used humor as a defense quite a bit. I was known as the class clown, and it was just the only way I could survive with kind of my mind state as if you can't beat them, then join them. And when you're the kid that's like last picked all the time on the teams, and when you get made fun of all the time, you have to find a way to get through it. And my way to get through it was to be the funny guy. And obviously the intelligence helped with that kind of sharp humor and sarcasm and wit. And that was my sword and shield. But then I got into Babson, which was a business specialty school, and the #1 business specialty school. And I thought I was going to do that. That's what everyone told me is, go make money, go get a business job, be a grown up. And I was on my path. And between my sophomore and junior year, I went to a doctor to get my physical. And I was telling him about these books I'm reading, one of which was Optimum Sports Nutrition by Dr. Michael Colgan, where he's giving these concoctions of vitamins and minerals and herbs to his athletes for the Olympics, and kind of doing studies on them, which was pretty novel at the time. And I was telling him how exciting this was, and creatine had just come out, and better forms of protein, like some good flavored whey proteins. And I found all this stuff super exciting. And he just looked at me, he picked up a piece of paper and drew a lifeline from 20 to 80 and said, why not be happy between here and that changed my life. This man going out of his way to tell me something that he didn't have to tell me, wasn't his responsibility to tell me, but because he was such an authority figure, and I had very few positive male role models in my life, he shifted like everything for me. Like, he gave me permission to go pursue my passion, this whole topic that I thought was fascinating. And I started transforming my body by working out and taking the supplements, and people were interested to find out how I did it. And then my expertise, was helping them change their lives. And I just kind of went from there. I didn't have Instagram or even MySpace or anything back then. So it was just word of mouth, like people around campus and people in my community back home. But that's what I did. And then I decided, yeah, I'm going to go back. I'm going to do this. And so it took me, well, I finished up at Babson. I did finish my bachelor's. And then I went to UNC Greensboro, University of North Carolina, Greensboro, and talked to a guidance counselor there. And this guidance counselor looked at me and said, this would take 26 credit hours a semester of pure science. You're a business student. You'll fail and fail miserably, and you're not even in that good a shape. And I left his office in tears, and I almost killed myself that night by taking pills and alcohol. And I felt like, how this one man gave me my dream, this other man seemingly ripped it away. And I can't even imagine how many people he did that for. We project out on other people and hurt people. And it's just sad that he was in a position to do that to people. Mm. And I considered taking my life at various points, but this was like really serious that night. But I made a decision finally that I'm just going to see this through. I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to put it all on my credit card because I didn't have money or support, and I am going to crush this thing. And I'll just think about that guy every day. And it wasn't a healthy thing. Like, I literally thought about him every single day of my life while I was at UNC Greensboro. People would say, like, hey, you want to go get a drink? You want to go out? You want to go to the mall? You want to go party? I was just like so focused on like proving this guy wrong that I was always like, no. And I ended up getting straight A's and getting into my dream school, Chapel Hill. And that's where like my master's with nutritional biochemistry like became like my focus, and then also getting that certification as an registered dietitian would be important. So that's where that came in. But then halfway through that journey onto being a dietitian, I was just pushing my body so hard. I think, especially since that one point where I was like, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to prove everyone wrong, because people almost made it seem like going back to school at that time was like something that, like, especially men, like are escaping reality. And right now it's so common to like pursue a master's or PhD or whatever, but back then it's like, okay, if you're not going in the military, then you're going to school, but once you're like out of your 4-year program, like go get a job and go make some money. It's like the longer you stay in school, it's like, what are you trying to escape? And so for me, like I had taken 4 years from my bachelor's, a couple of years at Greensboro to get my prereqs. Then I'm going to Chapel Hill for like 2.5 years for my master's and internship. And, people would make fun of me like I'm escaping something. So again, I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing, definitely helping people along the way. Back then it was on message boards and not on, social media so much. And I built up kind of this guru status on these message boards, on bodybuilding.com and some of these places. But halfway through, my body just kind of shut down on me, and I got Epstein-Barr, Hashimoto's, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, and my whole body was inflamed. I couldn't get out of bed. I thought my life was over again. I thought I'd never be able to work a real job, and that all of this stuff and all these haters were right, and my life is over. And so again, with this much pain, this much sadness and overwhelm, I thought of taking my life again, and I couldn't even go back to class to finish my classes. So I ended up, again, not killing myself and getting on the computer, just trying to still be on these message boards, but now looking for myself for answers. And I stumbled into keto, and it was over 20 years ago. And that's when my keto journey began. And I was reading 2 books. One was The Body Opus by Dan Duchaine, who was a steroid-using bodybuilder that worked with Bill Phillips of EAS and this Muscle Media 2000 magazine. And he had that book. And this book at the time, like all the bodybuilders were eating broccoli and, fish and grilled chicken. And he was talking about eating fat to get shredded for bodybuilding contests and how it can make you feel better. And then I also read this book by Lyle McDonald that was The Ketogenic Diet for the Practitioner. And these are both about 20 years ago. And interestingly, it was within the next few years that kind of Atkins kind of hit as well. And so I was learning a lot about keto, and I was able to get out of bed. I did get my energy back. I didn't know about mitochondrial health and insufficient cellular energy states and all this kind of stuff. I just knew like my body just felt like it was shutting down, and I couldn't think or move or operate or laugh or retain anything in my memory. Like, just being a human being was next to impossible. So I feel for people that are just stuck in bed and can't live, can't operate. It is the worst feeling in the world. And you do feel like taking your life because it's not like a life worth living. And for me, that's where the keto journey began. I ended up having other health issues and concerns we can talk about, but that's where it began, was pursuing my master's in nutrition and getting a lot of information on the low-fat diet I went the exact opposite direction.
Well, it's quite an amazing story, and I'm so glad that that guy, you turned it around and made him a motivating factor for you in the end. So the traditional, like the bro muscle building, bodybuilding diet, would you say it's high protein, high carb?
Well, yeah, that's interesting. It was at one point. I would say during the 80s and maybe some into the 90s, it was high carb. It had rice and rice cakes and all those things. But at some point, I believe like Atkins and South Beach diet and some of those things that were low carb, not necessarily keto, but low carb diets,
The zone.
really the zone. Yeah, that's another one. Um, those affected the zeitgeist of dieting. And so honestly, it's worse than that. Like high carb, low fat is one diet, but low carb, low fat is another diet that I did for a long time. And that's eating clean, where you eat low carb and low fat. And basically all you're eating is protein, and it is miserable. It's miserable on your, like, just the minute changes in your blood sugar, your blood glucose, and you feel like you're hitting the floor and you're hungry and you feel like agitated and hangry all the time. And it's just a terrible place to be because you're not adapted for blood glucose very well, as being like a carb burner, and you're not adapted for ketones as a fat burner very well. You're just in the state of like oxidizing protein and gluconeogenesis, and it's just ugly. Like I literally was like angry all the time. Like I'd wake up and just like I'd want to punch something. I was like ravenous. As I did try it for a while. Like it seemed like the thing to do. Like I did keto on and off through the years because it made me feel better. But it was hard to do like 20 years ago because there wasn't the recipes, there wasn't the communities, there wasn't the snacks and treats and all that stuff. So I kind of kept low carb with me, and sometimes it was keto, and sometimes it was bodybuilder style where it was basically no fat and all protein too.
Yeah, it seems like as long as you have a solid energy source coming in, whether you're doing high fat with protein or high carb with protein, then at least you have like a lot of energy coming in. But I could see how if you're doing low carb, low fat, high protein, you'd be in this like metabolic purgatory zone where like you're not eating enough fat to get into ketogenesis, but you're also not eating enough carb. So you're just kind of like stuck in that gluconeogenesis, like you were saying, just oxidizing all the protein. And that would be like quite a big burden if you were talking a high protein. Like I'm assuming you're talking 200 to 300 grams of protein if you're not taking in like any much fat or carb.
Easily. And it's not like I think that's dangerous. There's been data like from Dr. Joey Antonio that shows like I think upwards of 400 grams a day. And it doesn't put a burden on your kidneys as long as your kidneys are healthy. But like you said, I mean, it's okay, but it just can leave you like in a bad place. And I feel so much better when like I up my fat. I mean, people tell you like you are what you eat, and so I think people believe like I'm going to eat muscle and I'll gain muscle, and there's some rationale for that.
Yeah.
But I really believe it's more and this is especially true with fat, you don't eat fat and become fat. That is definitely thrown out the window now. It's you burn what you eat. Your body gets intelligent at burning what you eat.
Oh, I like
so
that.
I think that's a much better adage than you are what you eat.
That's so true. I mean, I would say you will get fat if you eat excess fat, just like you will get fat if you eat excess carb, but you won't get fat if you eat carbs or fat, as long as they're not in excess. But you burn what you eat. It's so good. It's like that one, like you are what you absorb. it's just kind of a new perspective on an old adage, but you burn what you eat. That's excellent.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so adding in a decent amount of fat has definitely helped my brain function a whole lot better. And when BHB is elevated, it's anti-catabolic. You don't need as much protein. Um, when BHB is elevated, you feel mentally sharper. You have increased satiety. So like I'd wake up in the morning and I'd be like, yeah, I guess I'll eat, or maybe I'll just fast until after my workout, or whatever. And it's like, it's okay either way. Or you're on a trip and someone's like, they don't have breakfast, or we don't have time to get breakfast on the way to the airport. You're like, cool, like,
Yeah.
I'll get it somewhere. But like when you're doing like the bodybuilder, like high protein diet, and I think you also add in, which is even worse, the 6 small meals a day. And like literally you like set yourself up for like just any minute blood sugar fluctuation, and you're just feeling like you want to punch someone, you want to eat something, it needs to happen now, or everyone in this room is going to die by my hands. It's like I can't even explain like how like ravenously hungry you are and how jerky you are to people around you as a result. You're like literally like a tantrum child, like just wanting food.
Yeah, they talk about that like bodybuilders or physique competitors when they're like on peak week or in prep, that it's like stay away. Or they're talk about like their relationships with their families just get so bad. And yeah, because walking around being hangry all the time. I remember doing like diets like that similarly when I was in college, and I would like wake up. I would wake up because my stomach was hungry. Like I would to think back to that is so bizarre now, because like when you are keto adapted, like you sometimes have to remind yourself to have a meal because you are so well adapted to burning body fat.
Yeah. And the next step in this evolution for me
Sorry, can I
with
ask one question? I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
want
yeah.
to forget it. So
Yeah, no,
at that
ask away.
time when you were doing high protein, like barely any carb, barely any fat, why didn't you just go high carb, high protein instead of high fat, high protein?
Because yeah, because even when I did low carb, I stayed lean, and I was, the lifelong fat kid that puts on fat like way easier than anyone else. I mean, I used to live off of like Coca-Cola and Oreos. And I mean, if I had Oreos, I'd like make an after school bowl of cereal with Oreos and milk. It's like I would eat like the worst stuff imaginable because I was just trying to feed a troubled soul. And that was the one thing that made me feel good. So,
I guess I
I
mean
mean,
like healthy carbs, like healthy
yeah,
carbs.
yeah. But I still, when I was low carb, my inflammation remained down. I didn't have the same energy like as when I was deeper in keto.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get as lean as when I was deeper in keto. And I didn't even know about intermittent fasting back then, but it used to happen to me all the time. I think just because I was busy in college, and when I was deep keto, like it would just, I'd sometimes miss a day's meals, like, or, I'd only eat once, did the OMAD thing, like without knowing that term. So, I mean, I got to eat more often. Sometimes that felt like a good thing. Like I allowed myself the protein thing. And then at the time, there was a lot of like proteins that were flavored, and I was working with some bodybuilding companies. And so it kind of felt like a treat that I got to have if I had milkshakes and I had pre-workouts and protein bars and all these things that certainly no one was adding fat to, because they didn't want to add any calories. It was like, how low calorie can we get this, and how high protein can we make it and leave sugar out? And that was kind of, the 90s and the knots or 00s or whatever it's called. And so that was that period of time for me. It was hard, so hard to find anything like pre-made keto or, do that yourself. One thing I learned over time was just adding like heavy cream to like some of these protein powders and MCTs, and I'd kind of make my own icing, if you will, like a frosting. And it was actually really good. And it served as like a sweet tooth treat. But that's another thing that happens like when you get into like all these bodybuilding products is you don't eat whole food, at least at the time. Like when you're trying to get all the whey protein and this and that, like you're eating like all this like artificial sweeteners, and you're staying hungry all the time because, it's very similar to sugar and like how it just pushes your appetite. And then you're also in that 6 small meals a day because you've been programmed for that and got to eat high protein. So you just stay in this, trapped in this cycle. And every now and then I would wake up from it and like, go back to keto and find myself feeling so much better. But I think me working in sports nutrition, like for these bodybuilding companies, led to like me eating and living that lifestyle a lot.
Right. Well, did you ever have like different seasons, like just like a competitor where you would allow yourself to just like be at maintenance for a while, or maybe in a surplus, you'd build muscle and then you'd go back into like a cutting phase later? Or do you feel like you were just always in that perpetual, like high protein, low fat, low carb?
No, you're right on. Like, I mean, I wasn't a professional competitor, but I was always trying to get as lean as possible for our 2 events, the Arnold and the Olympia. When you're in the supplement industry, sports nutrition, like those are like the hallmarks of your company, like to release products for any bodybuilders, fitness figure competitors you sponsor. And, it's when you get together with all your salespeople. So like everyone at our company treated it like they were getting on stage, like, and it was crabby around the company because we were prepping our booth and everything that was needed for the show. But then you're also eating like super low calorie and high protein and blah, 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 and taking all the fat burners and just feeling agitated and getting no sleep. And yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's been a few memes going around in the past year. You probably saw a couple of them where they're like, what is this competition, like bodybuilding competition that everyone on Instagram seems to be on? Like everyone in our community is like on, some kind of prep. And it's like, well, no one's really like in a competition except for those who actually are. We're all acting like we are. And I think there's more and more knowledge coming into our space too about like these seasons where like you have to give your body a break, where you do just go into like more of a growth phase where you're just at maintenance for a while and you're like building a bit, and then like seeing it that way where you have these cycles and seasons, and maybe you have a whole year where you don't diet at all. Like that just sounds, unheard of to a lot of people, but like you have to have those periods of breaks, and like no one here really is in a competition. So
It completely eps up your hormones, and I can get to that personally in a second. But I mean, also just mentally, it's tearing you down. Your organs atrophy if you're just chronically hypocaloric, like your heart, your brain, your liver. Like, I mean, you're not using them as much, so they don't need to take up as much energy. It's your body doing what's smart. So a lot of these organs will literally atrophy, like 10%, or I mean, you'll literally have like less brain function at hand because you're going so low calorie chronically. There's this guy, Dr. Mauro Di Pasquale. He was in the 90s. He was the first one to talk about the zigzag down in these kind of macro and meso and micro cycles of like how you really keep things, like almost like the P90X was like muscle confusion. And, that's how they advertised it. But it's the same idea where like you have that periodization, as I believe probably what the P90X stood for, but they never said it because it would probably be a conflict of intellectual property. But essentially periodization is the same idea with lifting weights, is that there's like non-linear undulating periodization and all these different types, but it's keeping that, for lack of a better term, that muscle confused, so that you don't just make that adaptation and you stop your body from changing over time. And it's the same with dieting. If you just crash your calories, your body's going to slow its metabolism dramatically, atrophy these organs, and you'll just feel like crap and you'll look like crap. And then whenever you actually do get calories back, you get into that yo-yo effect where your body's like, oh my God, here's food. Let's hold on to this as best we can, because your body thinks you've been starving and hurting itself for a long time. So yeah, like taking this kind of periodization approach and, cycling up and cycling down, but like kind of slowly going down over time through the zigzags is the way to do it. And I would encourage looking up some of these people that have wrote on this and came up with great programs. And if that's something that you want to do, is like diet correctly or put on more muscle correctly, doing that periodization kind of concept is helpful.
Yeah, I was just reading about the zigzag thing yesterday because I was looking up some body composition calculators, and there was an equation, and they talk. I'd never heard of the zigzag thing before. That's funny. But I think the other concept that's gaining in popularity now is like reverse dieting, and I've done a couple episodes on that, and like taking that concept that's been used by bodybuilders. Because so many of us, like we know how to diet, how to restrict and lose weight, but what do you do once you get to your goal weight? Like, how do you now like maintain? You now have to maintain at this low, caloric deficit that you've, put your body to. You have to reverse out of it somehow. And we never really knew any of these techniques. And there's this other one. I don't know if you've been following Stephanie Buttermore.
No.
She did this. She was a physique competitor, and she was extremely lean, and she was dealing with like insatiable hunger. So she did a reverse diet, but instead of going up by 100 or 200 calories every couple of weeks, she just went to 5,000 to 6,000 calories like overnight, and just was like, I'm going to give myself a year. And my body will just find its set point, because eventually my hormones will heal from all this overabundance of food. And like, she'll basically ramp her metabolism up to like 5,000 to 6,000 calories, and then start eating, half that, and then like cut back down to like a healthy weight. And she captured all of it and put it on YouTube, like her whole year journey of correcting her hormones, because she was dealing with insatiable hunger. But I love these concepts that are coming to us like from that. You've been in the bodybuilding world, but a lot of people don't know these ideas of like, well, everyone should know how to reverse diet. If you do a diet, you have to know how to fix your metabolism so you're not eating 1,000 calories for the rest of your life, right?
I would say that the reverse dieting phenomenon is more necessary if you didn't do that zigzag approach. It's literally reversing out of the way I'm talking about. You're periodizing up, which is cool, but it would be a whole lot less necessary if you periodize down and you gave yourself the time and space to lose that weight. Like if you're like on that crash diet of like, fasting and being, 1,000 calories under your like ideal, and you're in the sauna and you're doing cardio with your suit on, and you're taking diuretics and all this stuff. I mean, yeah, like that's brutal. Like you absolutely would want to reverse diet out of that. That's just not healthy to your body, and your body's like wondering like, what the hell is going on? But like if you're doing kind of that slower approach with the zigzags and the different cycles, and it's micro, meso, and macro cycles, and you're slowly going down. I mean, that's the way. Like one of the big things is that you don't have as dramatic an off season as some of these people have. Like where you can stay somewhat lean. Like I don't know. Like if you're a guy and you're competing at like, you know, 3 to 5%, depending on whether you're using some physique enhancing drugs or something. And, you know, maybe you stay at like 12, 13, 14%, like off season. Like it's not like, I mean, some people it's like they go to 25% and somehow they have to get down to 5. And it's like, that's brutal. That's brutal on your body. That's hard to achieve. And it's hard to keep going back to that year after year. I think that's too difficult. So it's honestly like, you know, it's supposed to be like a really healthy sport of like all these people that are super fit. And it's definitely not. Like the drug use, the recklessness, the self-loathing, uh, it's it's not awesome. And I've been there and I've hated my body and I've done terrible things to it in the name of trying to get ripped or get jacked. And it's a dark, dark path. You have to love yourself first. It's an ugly, ugly path to go down. You will not find self-love down that path, I promise.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that unfortunately the norm though for people outside of the bodybuilding space is these crash diets. Like we grew up reading like these ridiculous magazines like Cosmo, and all these magazines tell you the same thing. Like just cut your calories and run every day. And we've all done it. Like most women I know who dieted, every woman I know has dieted at some point, but like we all do the same thing. You just eat less, but there's never an article that says like what to do now that you've lost the weight or whatever. So everyone ends up rebounding and your body composition ends up just being worse and worse and worse. So, you know, if anyone is going to do any kind of dieting, I just like the idea of like boosting your caloric intake as much as possible, and then taking that approach where you get it as high as possible to reverse diet, adding in exercise, and you take some of these concepts from bodybuilding and then you do a cut, but you're cutting like 10, 20% of that. And so it's this like long-term sustainable thing where it may take you 6 months or 8 months or a year to get, you know, where you want to be, but then it's a level where you can stay at, instead of like most people just cut to like 1,200 calories and then exercise like crazy. And yeah, like you said, the body is like, what's going on?
Well, there's several things there. I mean, you have to like love the journey. If you consider yourself like a work of art and you're just, you know, taking that little hammer and chisel and you're just refining that work of art, and you love yourself and you're curious to where like how far you can kind of push the limits on what this work of art can be, then that's awesome. And if you have self-love along the way and the journey is enjoyable and you enjoy going to the gym and seeing the people at the gym and making those little differences every day you look in the mirror, you see something new and you're proud of yourself, that's awesome. But I would say about 95% of the people, it's not like that, you know, where it's I hate myself, I won't be happy until I get here, and I'm ugly and I'm fat. Even if they have a six-pack, it's I'm ugly and I'm fat and I'm not as good as so-and-so. And it makes it harder because you're now comparing yourself to like the incomparable, almost like these people that are on magazines that have, you know, the digital airbrushing and all these things and diuretics and lighting and on and on and on. And it's hard to compete against that and be that. And so you're holding yourself to an impossible standard and waiting for a day that will never come. And then that's why like the rebound is so intense, because it's not an enjoyable journey for most people, but it can be. but you need to create the healthy relationship with your body and not have body dysmorphia. You need to create the healthy relationship with the weights, with the food, with the people around you that may be on a dark path or a positive path, and not let yourself succumb to that or kind of pick up their habits. Just know that you're on your own path, and everyone's on their own path, and this is your goal, and you're on your way to it. And just allow yourself plenty of stops along the way to say, wow, I'm really proud of myself. This is a great job. I mean, just like that macro, meso, microcycles, you need to like have little stops and little goals along the way where you can admire what you've done and what you're accomplishing. Whether you end up getting to that huge goal or not, you're enjoying the process, you're enjoying the journey.
Yeah, I love that. Two things. You made some really great points there. The first, I think all magazine photos like that should come with a disclaimer so you can see this photo is not real. It was edited and, airbrushed, and we use special filters and lighting, and don't try to look like this person because this person doesn't exist. Like you said, it would be so nice if we could see a disclaimer like that for all those media images that we're surrounded with all the time that make us feel inadequate. But I love the idea of, people talk about like the diet or weight loss journey versus like a health journey. And that is probably the difference between like hating your body and loving it. Like if you hate it, you just want to diet and like kill it and shrink it and, beat it into submission. But if you love your body, you want your body to be healthy. It's a reflection of how much you love yourself. So you want to give your body and yourself like more health and more wellness. And that's like the other side where you're adding in exercise and just like whole foods, and you're making those choices to be healthy, also look good as a part of it, but more with that like as the center of it.
Exactly. And along those lines, like even though I knew what was healthy, I fell into that bodybuilder trap of eating all these essentially processed foods that were low carb and low fat. And so I'd, eat these low fat, low sugar candies. I'd be having the protein shakes. I'd be having Diet Cokes and bars and all of these things all the time. Lots of caffeine and stimulants to make it through these long days. And it was a normal thing around the office. You do like these pre-workouts that have 3, 4, whatever, 100 milligrams of caffeine, even like ephedrine or DMAA that are just intense stimulants. And I ended up getting a pituitary adenoma, a brain tumor. And I figured it out from like just having horrible headaches. And I was kind of getting skinny fat, like where like I was losing muscle, but kind of replacing it with fat. Like it wasn't like I was getting fat. Like it's just, it's hard to describe unless you've seen it. Like your just muscle is kind of going away, but it just seems like it's getting replaced with fat. And I just felt exhausted and burnt out all the time. I was barely sleeping. And I went to the doctor and got checked out. My prolactin was sky high. It was a prolactinoma. And my estradiol, my estrogen was extremely high. My testosterone was like 70, which is super low. So I had like no libido. I was hard to keep on muscle. Like, and so just trying to figure all this out, but it was like the damage I was doing to myself. And I was working like 80 hours a week, and I was working out hard and getting 3 hours of sleep and staying under stress and eating all this crap and pushing my body. And that's when I like started taking stock of like a lot of things that I talked about for years, but like, those are kind of the early days of biohacking, the early days of intermittent fasting. Definitely focusing more on keto. Paleo was booming right then. I was focused more on like, okay, I need to eat whole foods. And that's when, things really changed for me. Like I needed to focus and I am on my own path. I'm not going to worry about the people around me. And so that's when I really cleaned things up. It was about 8 years ago, and I've been more focused ever since.
That's awesome. And what would you say your keto approach looks like now? Because I know you utilize different approaches, like sometimes you do cyclical keto, or these are things I don't know as much about. Like, how have you evolved your approach to it all?
Yeah, you know, I think you hear a consistent theme that I was really hard on myself most of my life and abusive to myself. And you can't blame the people around you because you allow people to treat you to the level that you think you deserve. And said differently, if anyone treated you like you treated you, you wouldn't be their friend. I mean, but I mean, you're treating yourself the worst, essentially. And just below that bar is where you allow people to treat you. So I started to learn over time I need to love myself, one, and two, I need to set boundaries and not have people take advantage of me or treat me a certain way, because I will work hard. I will like go to the wall for you and all those kinds of things. So I need to like focus on working a healthy amount of hours. I need to enjoy my work every day. I need to play sports and not just work out in the gym and, you know, mix it up, like do agility ladders when I'm at the gym, or ball smashes, or something that's fun, like add fun and play back into your life. And that became very important to me, is going down that path. And then more recently, I've been really working on, you know, plant medicine journeys and gratitude journals and daily affirmations and just stuff to feed my soul. Like I think I've gotten really good at the biohacks and the keto and, you know, the physical and mental performance type of hacks. But now I'm really working at the core of everything, the soul of everything, and trying to feed my soul so that I truly love myself. And that's where it all begins. And I can enjoy my journey fully without hurting myself to achieve. I really, like, most of my life, I felt like love equals achievement.
Mm-hmm.
That, I mean, you're a high achiever. You know this. Like I had to get straight A's. I had to get this award. I had to, like, every year at every company I've been at, like at Dymatize when I was there as the director of R&D, I won Employee of the Year every year. But it's like all this stuff, like at what cost? Like, because I was just driven. Like, I want the awards, I want the accolades, I want the letters after my name. Like, I want to be lean, I want to be smart, I want to be up on stage. Like, you know, now that I've been on this podcast, I need to jump up to that podcast, and, you know, I need to write a book so people can see I'm an author. And it just goes on and on and on. And none of these things are necessarily bad things, but it's just the mindset you have going into it and the intentions you're setting for it. If you're doing it because you're insecure and you think achievement and accolades will give you love, it's not going to happen. It's going to be fleeting at best. And there's always the next thing. There's always the next level. And now you're surrounded by these people because you've leveled up and you feel insecure again and you got to push harder, and it just never ends. And so I'm learning to love myself, love the journey, and that love is free. That's one thing I learned when I did a plant medicine experience and I did a higher dose of psilocybin. Was just, I literally like was laying there and I felt like all the burdens were off me, and I felt like I was floating up off the floor, and I was in this cuddle puddle, which I don't know if you know that term, but, you know, sometimes you get like happy and you like enjoy just laying around people and feeling their energy, even caressing them. It's not in the, like, people might think if they've never done it or seen it, think it's like a sexual kind of, and it's not at all. It's like, it's literally like a childlike mind that you have going into it. It's such innocence. And you just feel love all around you, like the pureness, the unconditional love that you don't need to strive or achieve or earn. It's just there. And like so much of like while I'm trying to spend my life adding dollars and adding letters to my name, it's more removing the layers and removing the things that we've built up over time. It's not adding that it will get you the love, it's the removing. It's removing all the shit in your life and getting back to that inner child, the play, the joy, the openness, the vulnerability. And that's when you will feel love.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever took the Enneagram test.
Yeah.
Mine was a 3, and it said achiever, and it said you value your self-worth on your last accomplishment. And I was like, whoa. I mean, it resonated so true for me. And I was like, I am always chasing the next thing. And then like, whenever I do something big, I don't even take the time to appreciate it. I'm just like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? And it's like, I feel like I'm going to be loved and receive that love through that. And it was such a huge insight for me. And it was only like 6 months ago or something. I try to remind myself, you know, every day. And in the last half year, everything that we've been going through has given me an opportunity to like slow down and be like, why am I always saying yes to doing all these things for all these people all the time? Like, why don't I just like take it a little bit easier on myself and just like not feel like my self-worth is determined by that? And I heard this, I think it was Marissa Peer did this video. She's a psychiatrist in London, and she's been doing this like I am enough campaign. And I was like, yes, like I am enough. Like I don't need to write anything or do anything to deserve love. Like you are enough. I am enough just as I am. And that was a huge insight. So I bet I'm pretty safe bet you're also an Enneagram 3, or, you know, that you have that.
I am. And you remind me, I think one of the reasons I love you so much, like I connected so deeply to you immediately, and you'll find this to be true, like I'll go into why in a second, is you literally remind me of me. You're the prettier version of me, of course, but you remind me a lot of me. And just, you have like such a giving, generous heart, but you're also like foregoing. Like I can tell like that's your personality, is to like to be driven and to achieve, and it's foregoing your own personal joy and like sacrificing for others and giving others the advice that's so hard to take for yourself because you're just giving so much away. And I know what that's like so much. And but you're such like you are such a beautiful, kind, generous, amazing person that I just truly enjoy you, and I think you're one in a million.
Oh, thank you. Likewise.
Yeah, and I think it's just we have to work hard to protect our heart, you know, like to set boundaries, because we just easily give it away because we're trying to earn that affection. There's actually a really cool like a way to test this is like, what are your 3 people that you would love to have dinner with, dead or alive, throughout history? Like who would you choose?
Tony Robbins is like not even a hesitation. That would be like number 1. Tony Robbins. Anyone dead or alive? There's a couple of authors, Florence Scovel Shinn, and probably like Napoleon Hill. Like those would be 3.
So give me 3 traits about these three people, Tony Robbins, Napoleon Hill, that you admire?
With Tony, he just like uplifts other people and he's always like giving so much.
Uh-huh.
With Florence Scovel, hi cutie. Oh, sorry for anyone who's listening to this. Shawn just pulled a really cute puppy into the screen.
Yep.
Florence Scovel, she just has like this unbelievably positive mindset, and she was like a before her time kind of thinker. And what's the last one I said? Napoleon Hill like taught other people abundance and like how to bring it into their lives, and wrote, Think and Grow Rich, which has like helped so many people.
Now replace those names with your name and say those same traits.
Like say it in my right now.
Yeah, I want to hear it. Like, say some of those traits back to me, but use your name.
Vanessa always uplifts other people and gives their energy and is always positive, ahead of her time, and helping other people become more abundant. It's like so hard to say that stuff.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like,
it really is, but
like I'm sweating.
Right. It's hard.
But
those are the
like
traits.
Arrogant.
I know, and it isn't. And those traits that you admire in other people are the traits that deep down, when you remove all these layers, that you admire about yourself. And it's just like we project our negativity and hurt people. We also project our positivity, and the things that we most deeply admire in other people are the things that we love about ourselves. We see ourselves in other people. The last step is an interesting one. Like, who's the person that you would most refuse to have at your dinner, the person you most dislike, and one reason why?
Well, Hitler is easy because he hated so many people.
Well, typically, I mean, that might, you might like think through it a little bit more. I know that's kind of an easy response, but like it's actually the same thing. It's like the one thing that you're struggling with yourself. It's like, again, you project out, like, when you think about the people that really irritate you, it's because there's something in there that's like that you're struggling with, that you're not so great with.
Every day when I feel like everyone is a mirror, and whenever there's anyone like in my family or around me who's irritating me, I'm like, I don't like that about them because I hate it in me. Like I fully know that it only irritates me because I feel like it's a flaw that I have, and it's being like mirrored back at me.
Magnified. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, those are just some things to be aware of, that we just project ourselves out. But at the same time, like, take again that moment to recognize, like, Tony Robbins and Napoleon Hill and these people, like, they're you. You may think, oh, because they have a book and they've touched so many lives, they're so much better. It doesn't mean anything. Like, it's the human being, it's the soul that you're projecting out, it's the work you're trying to do, it's the heart that you have. And it's the same as Tony Robbins or Napoleon Hill or whoever. Like, you have that love and that energy, and I'm proud of you for it.
Thank you. Well, this is a good segue into how do you, for all of our listeners, what are ways to build more self-appreciation and self-love? I mean, I love these exercises. Like, everyone should write them down at home and see how, and maybe practice saying they are those things too, because it's not easy. I did it on a podcast. I know you guys are all listening, so that's why I was sweating so much. But if you are, listening to this and you want to learn how to build self-appreciation, I know one thing that I try to do, I don't do it enough. I only end up doing it like once a year, but I try to write a page of things that I appreciate about myself. And it's hard to take the time to do that. But once you write a couple sentences, like it starts flowing and you're like, oh, I do like a lot of things about myself.
That's a beautiful thing to do. I think getting a gratitude journal is so impactful to really change your mind on just how blessed you are in your life and how many good things there are in your life. It's a little hard at first, like all these things I could tell you, like meditation, like, you know, going to the gym or whatever. You just got to flex that muscle and just, you know, do it every day, and it gets easier and easier. And then it won't be just in the journal. It'll just be like a way that you think, that you start seeing all the beauty, all the amazing things that are going on around you, that 99.9% of life goes right. So stop focusing on like how bad this 0.1% is. I mean, during COVID, to your point, this has been the most blessed year of my life, because I was supposed to travel about 300 days this year. And I was pushing on achievement. And I had this plant medicine journey where I had some realizations, but my schedule was so booked, I was, you know, going back into reality, quote unquote. And it just was what it was. And I'd get to that at some point. I'd integrate that. I'd deal with that at some point. But some point came immediately. Like the world got canceled and everything got shut down. And I had to reevaluate like all the things that I was putting my time and money and energy into, and say, was it serving me? Am I becoming the person I want to be? Am I loving myself more? Am I lit up? Is it a hell yes or a hell no? And it's that simple. And so making those decisions and kind of mapping that out and cleaning up your life, again, like removing layers that are making your life clouded, is so much better. And so, you know, doing that, you know, being very conscious with your 5 that you have around you. You're the product of the people, the 5 people closest to you. So how consciously are you choosing those people? If you want to be more generous, you want to be sharper with your wit, more creative, all these different things, then pick someone who's generous, pick someone who's creative, you know, pick someone who has sharp wit, and like put them in your 5 consciously. Go out of your way to connect with them, and obviously give them value back. And that's critical. And, you know, take time to play, to let your soul like have room to breathe, like listen to music and take walks and, you know, take breaks. There's no way, like, you know, I used to be the 80 person. And when you're pushing so hard, you're quote unquote grinding, you're not in a creative space. You're not in a space where you're going to have the next brilliant idea. You're just literally grinding against your will. You're breaking down. There's heat, smoke, and you're falling apart. You like hustle and grind means sympathetic and ultra sympathetic nervous system. You know, it should be hustle and flow where you times, and you need to really get it done. But it should be so that you get to that point where you're in your creative play mode, where like ideas are just coming to you and everything clicks and you're loving life. It's that flow state. If you're just like, you know, pushing and then heads down and pushing in this grind state, like you're not enjoying life. You're literally heads down. You have no idea what's going on. You're just surviving. So those are some important things. I'd say the 4 Agreements was a massive life changer for me. I still go back and read it or listen to it. I mean, probably every 6 months. I love it.
Me too.
There's just so many things that you pull out of it, not just the actual 4 Agreements, but there's some really good stuff about how we make agreements with ourselves that we call these things truths that aren't. And that's a deeper part of the book that I think some people can miss, but it's really important that, and you realize this when you start working with plant medicine or doing meditation, like a lot of the things that we're saying have to be or have to happen, or I've got to do that, or this is an obligation, I have no other choice. You have a choice. You aren't obliged. You can become something else. You can do something else. You can go elsewhere. You can leave the situation you're in. You have choices. These truths that you told yourself are not true. You've let people project these things on you and then accepted them as that is the way it is. And it isn't. So giving yourself freedom and granting yourself grace are like full things for me. Like, you know, we're so hard on ourselves. So granting yourself that grace is just, can be a life changer when you just like realize that you are doing the best you can. And that's okay. And the people around you are doing the best they can with what they were given. And that's okay. And just say to yourself that like these things that in the past, they've served me and got me here. They've taught me lessons. They got me to this level. They gave me these credentials or this knowledge or whatever. This ex-boyfriend gave me these lessons. And that served me, but it no longer serves me now. And now I'm going this direction.
Yeah, I love all those suggestions. For me, my number one non-negotiable every day is writing a page of gratitude in the morning, because we're wired for negativity, to look for the worst things, to look for the tiger in the bush. You know, we're just wired to focus on our fears, especially when you wake up. I have to set the tone every day, even before like exercise, maybe not before water, but just before just about everything, before coffee. I have to write a page of just what I'm thankful for. Even if those things haven't manifested yet, but it just shifts your mindset so much to that like abundance versus scarcity, and sets a tone for the whole day. So I'm a big fan of that. But I love all the things you mentioned, and I always love getting to have you on the show. I feel like we always get to talk a bit about like the keto stuff and diet, which we're all here for, but we always go a little deeper too. And I think, yeah, really appreciate all the stuff that you shared, and I know that our listeners will too.
Oh, thank you. I love being on, and I appreciate you so much. And it is a fun conversation that I look forward to. I love seeing your face. Eventually, at some point, I'm going to hug you in real life. Yeah. Somehow, somewhere.
We'll make it.
I'm going to list that as a goal.
Nice. Yeah. I really look forward to that. And hopefully it'll happen before too long. But thanks so much for being on again today, Shawn.
Of course. It was great to be on, and I will happily be on again anytime you want.
All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning into the episode today. I had so much fun recording with Shawn. I hope you enjoyed it too. If you have a moment to leave me a rating or review, it means the absolute world to me. And I would love to hear what you guys think of the show, what you'd like to hear more of. As always, if you want to try out keto with me as your guide and coach, you can head over to ketogenicgirl.com. I just released my new carnivore meal plans I was working on for the last 7 months. And I modeled meal plans after how I've been eating in the past couple of years to really accelerate my body recomposition and get my body fat percentage down from initially 40% down to 34% and now 21%. And it's really made a huge difference for me. So you can check those out at ketogenicgirl.com. The meal plans come with membership in my coaching Facebook group as well, so I can support you and answer any questions that you have as we go along. So thank you guys so much for tuning into the episode today. I love you guys and wishing you a fat-filled rest of your day. Bye for now.